I'm in the hood on them 24s.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your patience. We're going to go ahead and get started here with event number 14. This is the women's 200-yard medley relay, Heat 1. Swimming in lane 2, the Calvin F relay of Sadowski, Maring, Deluski, and Irway. Swimming in lane 3, the Calvin E relay of Bartman, Triebfeldner, Reiser, and Algira. Lane 4, the Calvin C relay of Fippen, Harrison, Radowski, and Harris. Lane 5, the Carthage C relay of McDaniels, Barone, Knecht, and Garbine. Lane 6, the Calvin D relay, Beagle, Hopek, Caspit, Winkle. Lane 7, Carthage D relay, Donovan, Skalski, Bob, and Schwantner. Times in lane 2 are unofficial and will be recorded on hand times. And winning that heat with a final time of 151.49, it's Calvin C relay in lane 4. That relay of Fippen, Harrison, Radowski, and Harris. Up next is heat 2 for the women's 2 medley. Lane 1 for Carthage, the Carthage B relay. The Carthage B relay of Hackman, Vatch, Marsh, and Lee. Lane 2, the Calvin B relay of McNearney, Ganger, Shutter, and Andrews. Lane 3, the Albion A relay of Wynn, Adcock, Gray, and Marvin. Lane 4, the Calvin A relay of Merkel, Bajwa, Vanderweel, and Benjelink. Lane 5, the ONU A relay of Kalmanowicz, Leatherman, Shupperth, and Greenlee. Times on the board are unofficial. Lane 6, the Carthage A relay of Messina, Kane, Klinger, and Brown. Lane 7, the ONU B relay of Weininger, Elliott, Muser, and Rissmiller. Once again, times on the board are unofficial. Final time unofficial for lane 4, but order of finish is correct. Lane 4 takes the top time, lane 2 in second there. Carthage third in lane 6. Carthage B relay fourth in lane 1. Albion and ONU on the wall in lanes 3 and 5. We'll get those times correctly put into the system as we proceed to event number 15. This is the men's 200-yard medley relay. There are 3 heats. This is heat 1. All right. Heat 1. Swimming in lane 2, the Calvin I relay of Crudelli, Seidelman, Devon, and Bergsma. Lane 3, the Calvin G relay of McIntyre, Full, Broadstick, and Bublik. Lane 5, the Calvin F relay of Benjalink, Nelson, Skutanis, and Rose. Lane 6, the Calvin H relay of Fontana de Moraes, Duguet, Campbell, and Zdravkov. A reminder that there will be a 10-minute break following Heat 3 of the men's 200-yard medley relay. And the Calvin F relay on the wall at 1:41.01 in lane 5. Up next is Heat 2. Lane 1 for the ONU-E relay of Diller, Haymer, Rios, and Kostorix. Lane 2, the Calvin D relay of Patel, Cromp, Bales, and Miller. Lane 3, the ONU-C relay of Miller, Morgan, Jablonski, and Rich. Lane 4, the Carthage D relay of Nord, Demaster, Ergun, and Gearhart. Lane 5, the Calvin C relay of Boonder, Ketro, Wichert, and Morford. Lane 6, the Carthage C relay of Wajdila, Morris, Luz, and Sei. Lane 7, the ONU D relay of Verb, Thomas, Hunyan, and Al Abrigo. Lane 8, the Calvin E relay of Heisinga, Stimpert, Shakari, and Van Solen. And Calvin C relay on the wall at 137.28 in lane 5. That relay consisting of Boonder, Ketro, Wichert, and Morford. Calvin D relay on the wall, second there in lane 2. Calvin E relay third at 139.67. Up next is heat 3, final heat of the men's 2 medley relay. Lane 1, the Carthage B relay of Cromp, Lebrevich, Glosa, and DeLuca. Lane 2, the Calvin B relay of McKinney, Wynn, Tolby, and Logan. Lane 3, the Albion A relay of Hung, Dubel, Pruch, and Roberts. Lane 4, the Calvin A relay of Merkel, Gemin, Gabriel, and Platt. Lane 5, the ONU A relay of Maglugan, Clark, McCluskey, and Wilt. Lane 6, the Carthage A relay of Halas, Polich, Landorf, and Przoka. Lane 7, the ONU B relay of Boppel, Ray, Peace, and Reddy. Lane 8, the Albion B relay of Steele, Galvin, Lukasik, and Pentland. And Calvin's A relay on the wall at 130.13 in lane 4. That relay consisting of Merkel, Gemin, Gabriel, and Platt. Calvin's B relay on the wall at 134.17 in lane 2, taking the second spot. Carthage A relay on the wall at 136.8 in lane 3. Taking third, ONU on the wall in lane 5 at 137.01 for the fourth place spot. We now have a 10-minute break. This is a 3-minute warning. 3-minute warning. We will clear the pool in 2 minutes. We will clear the pool in 2 minutes. Two-minute warning. Please clear the pool. Please clear the competition pool. All right, we will resume this morning's competition with event number 16. This is the women's 400-yard individual medley. There is only one heat. Lane 1 for Calvin, Eden Maring. Lane 2 for Carthage, Kaylee Bobb. Lane 3 for Carthage, Bree Sklasky. Lane 4 for Calvin, Zoe Poe. Lane 5 for Calvin, Maddie McNearney. Lane 6 for Carthage, Lindsay Hackman. Lane 7 for Ohio Northern, Kate Kalmanowicz. Lane 8 for Calvin, Elizabeth Daluski. And Zoe Poe touching in at 4:38.91 to take the women's 400-yard individual medley in lane 4 for Calvin. Teammate Maddie McNerney inside the flags there, touching at 4:48.84. And Skalski in lane 3 at 4:31.29 in lane 3, taking the third place spot. Hackman for Carthage at 4:57.57. 4 ladies finished, 5 ladies finished with Eden Maring at 5:03.56 in lane 1. Up next is event number 17, the men's 400-yard individual medley. There are 3 heats. This is heat 1. Swimming in lane 3 for Albion, Jalen Hung. Lane 4 for Albion, Stephen Matias. Lane 5 for Albion, Tyler Dubel. Lane 6 for Albion, Wesley Jenkins. And Double on the wall at 424.60 in lane 5. Jalen Hung on the wall at 424.86 in lane 3, both for Albion. The All-Britain heat here. And that's it for heat 1. Up next is heat 2. Swimming in lane 1 for Carthage is Isaac DeMaster. Lane 2 for Carthage, Tyler Wajjala. Lane 3 for ONU, Josh Ray. Lane 4 for Calvin, John Reeder. Lane 5 for ONU, Diego Rios. Lane 6 for ONU, Riley Verb. Lane 7 for Carthage, Jackson Morris. Lane 8 for Albion, Caleb Galvin. And John Reeder on the wall at 424.51 in lane 4 for Calvin. And Morris on the wall for Carthage at 428.93. Rios at 430.68. DeMaster in lane 1 at 441.33. And that's going to do it for Heat 2. Up next, our third and final heat, men's 4IM. Lane 1 for Calvin is Evan Nelson. Lane 2 for Calvin, Logan Yakubowski. Lane 3 for ONU, Liam Donovan. Lane 4 for Calvin, Ryan Hallberg. Lane 5 for Calvin, Evan Haney. Lane 6 for Calvin, Jacob Ziegler. Lane 7 for Calvin, Peter Crudelli. Lane 8 for ONU, Long Hun.
And there he is on the wall, 409.99. Ryan Hallberg for Calvin. Jacob Ziegler on the wall at 417.1. Evan Haney at 418.93 in lane 5. Donovan on the wall for ONU at 423.00. Jakubowski's on the wall. We've got a time for him, but he doesn't know it yet. Nelson at 432.66. That's it for the men's 400-yard individual medley. Up next is event number 18, the women's 100-yard butterfly. There are 2 heats. This is heat 1. Swimming in lane 2 for Carthage is Emily Belsick. Lane 3 for Carthage, Jelani Guyan. Lane 4 for Carthage, Emma Garbine. Lane 5 for Carthage, Claire Knecht. Lane 6 for Carthage, Raina McDaniels. Lane 7 for Albion, Leah Gray. Gray at 106.7, Knecht at 106.9. Up next is heat 2 of the women's 1 fly. Lane 1 for ONU is Leela DeLong. Lane 2 for Calvin, Vivian Reiser. Lane 3 for Calvin, Elise Radowski. Lane 4 for Calvin, Grace Shutter. Lane 5 for Carthage, Lois Klinger. Lane 6 for Calvin, Aliyah Casapit. Lane 7 for Carthage, Sophia Milovej. Lane 8 for Carthage, Addie Schaefer. Grace Shutter hits the wall at 100.15 with a close out touch with Klinger on 100.17. Radowski at 101.31 in lane 3. Up next is event number 19. This is the men's 100-yard butterfly. There are 3 heats. This is heat 1. Swimming in lane 2 for ONU, Elias Abrego. Lane 3 for Calvin, Josh Cromp. Lane 4 for Carthage, Denitz Ergun. Lane 5 for Carthage, Ian Glosa. Lane 6 for ONU, Xavier Diller. Lane 7 for ONU, Rob Rich. Results for the men's 400-yard individual medley are scrolling on the board. Cromp on the wall at 55.23 in lane 3 for heat 1 of the men's 100 fly. Up next, Heat 2. Swimming in lane 1 for ONU is Aiden Magooligan. Lane 2 for Carthage, Ben Priscota. Lane 3 for Calvin, Tim Campbell. Lane 4 for ONU, Austin Peace. Lane 5 for Calvin, Drew Bronsick. Lane 6 for Carthage, Jared Luz. Lane 7 for ONU, Evan Miller. Lane 8 for Carthage, Andrew Leberevich. And Bronsick touching at 54.88 in lane 5. Peace at 54.90. Up next is Heat 3. Results for the women's one fly are scrolling on the board. In Heat 3 for the men's one fly, lane 1 for Calvin, Stephen Devon. Lane 2 for Calvin, Jake Skatanis. Lane 3 for Calvin, Ben Wichert. Lane 4 for Calvin, David Gabriel. Lane 5 for Calvin, Andrew Talby. Lane 6 for Carthage, AJ Landorf. Lane 7 for Calvin, Daniel Miller. Lane 8 for Calvin, Kellen Morford. David Gabriel on the wall at 50.71. Talby, 51.68. Landorf, 52.16. Wichert, 52.70. Up next is event number 20. This is the women's 200-yard freestyle. There are 3 heats. This is Heat 1. Lane 2 for Albion, Lily Marvin. Lane 4 for Albion, Caitlin Kreb. Lane 5 for Calvin, Piper Sadowski. Lane 6 for Carthage, Annika Grunwald. And Sadowski on the wall at 211.62 in lane 5 for Calvin. Kreb at 212.98. Grunewald at 216.40. Heat 2. Swimming in lane 1 for Calvin is Ella McNeely. Lane 2 for Calvin, Kaylee Turner. Lane 3 for Calvin, Avery Russell. Lane 4 for ONU, Catherine Greenlee. Lane 5 for Carthage, Addie Schaefer. Lane 6 for Carthage, Layla Lee. Lane 7 for Albion, McKinley Lewandowski. Lane 8 for Calvin, Emily Bartman. Russell at 201.87 in lane 3. Bartman at 204.46 in lane 8. Lewandowski for Albion at 206.13. Greenlee at 206.42 in lane 4. Results for the men's 100-yard butterfly are scrolling on the board as we speak. That's going to do it for Heat 2. Up next is Heat 3 for the women's 2 free. Lane 1 for Carthage is Julia Brown. Lane 2 for Calvin, Sarah Algira. Lane 3 for Calvin, Holly Vanderweel. Lane 4 for Calvin, Emma Merkel. Lane 5 for Calvin, Maria Harris. Lane 6 for Calvin, Ella Andrews. Lane 7 for Calvin, Emerson Irway. Lane 8 for Calvin, Kristen Winkle. Last 25 here. Merkel in lane 4 leading the way. Harris in lane 5 next to her teammate And Merkel on the wall, 154.45. Harris on the wall, 158.26. Unofficial time of 2:01.84 in lane 2. 2:01.84 in lane 2, unofficial. That's going to do it for our women's 200 free. Up next is event number 21, the men's 200-yard freestyle. There are 4 heats. This is heat 1. Lane 3 for ONU is Parker Brown. Lane 4 for Carthage is Nick DeLuca. Lane 5 for Albion, Will Pentland. DeLuca at 154.19. Results for the women's 200-yard freestyle will begin scrolling on the board momentarily. Up next is heat 2 for the men's 200 freestyle. Lane 1 for ONU is Isaac Reddy. Lane 2 for ONU, Austin Hawkins. Lane 3 from Calvin, Logan Bublik. Lane 4 for Calvin, Alex Bergsma. Lane 5 for Carthage, Cal Cramp. Lane 6 for Carthage, Sean Noller. Lane 7 for Carthage, Aiden Nord. And lane 8 for Carthage, Adam Hollis. Cramp for Carthage at 150.48. Bergsma for Calvin, 151.1. Nord for Carthage, 151.4. Up next is heat 3 of 4. Lane 1 for Albion is Harper Prutch. Lane 2 for Calvin, Henry Fippen. Lane 3 for ONU, Nathan Herbert. Lane 4 for Calvin, Addison Vinsolin. Lane 5 for Calvin, Kyle Shackery. Lane 6 for Calvin, Ryan Seidelman. Lane 7 for ONU, Owen Weiss. Lane 8 for ONU, Tyler Edmonds. Shackery at 148.29. Herbert at 148.62. Prutch at 150.97. Up next will be heat number 4, our final heat for the men's 2 free. Lane 1 for Calvin, Carson McIntyre. Lane 2 for Calvin, Andrew Stimpert. Lane 3 for Calvin, Luka Zadravkov. Lane 4 for Calvin, Carter Detweiler. Lane 5 for ONU, Chase McCluskey. Lane 6 for Calvin, Will Bales. Lane 7 for Calvin, Zach Logan. Lane 8 for Calvin, Dominic Rose. Logan out front in lane 7 at 50.39. Detweiler on the wall at 144.61 with a strong back half. McCluskey of ONU at 145.18. Zadravkov 146.9. Up next is event number 22. This is the women's 100-yard breaststroke. There are 3 heats. This is heat 1. Yeah. Lane 3 for Carthage is Giada Castelli. Lane 4 for ONU, Liv Elliott. Lane 5 for ONU, Mia Musser. Up next is Heat 2. Lane 1 for Carthage, Lucy Brown. Lane 2 for Carthage, Grace Barone. Lane 3 for Calvin, Isabella Tripp-Fellner. Lane 4 for Carthage, Riley Vatch. Lane 5 for Carthage, Noelle Marsh. Lane 6 for Albion, Alyssa Glazer. Lane 7 for ONU, Chloe Schoperth. And Marsh on the wall at 112.65. We will be up next is Heat 3. Lane 1 for ONU, Abby Leatherman. Lane 2 for Albion, Casey Adcock. Lane 3 for Calvin, Eloise Harrison. Lane 4 for Calvin, Elizabeth Bajwa. Lane 5 for Calvin, Gracie Ganger. Lane 6 for Carthage, Jill Kane. Lane 7 for Calvin, Elise Radowski. Lane 8 for Calvin, Anya Hopek. Elizabeth Bajwa on the wall at 104.06 in lane 4. Gracie Ganger on the wall at 106.08. Harrison at 109.1. Radowski at 109.5. That's it for Heat 3 of the women's one breast. Up next, event number 23, the men's 100-yard breaststroke. There are 3 heats. This is Heat 1. Swimming lane 2 for Albion is Cameron Thompson. Lane 3 for Carthage is Carson Say. Lane 4 for ONU, Josh Hemeyer. Lane 6 for Albion, Spencer Lukasik. Lane 7 for Albion, Brody Roberts. Lane 4 takes it with 106.51. Hemeyer. Up next is heat 2. Lane 1 for Carthage, Jared Luz. Lane 2 for Calvin is Luke Foll. Lane 3 for Carthage, Andrew Leberevich. Lane 4 for ONU, Josh Ray. Lane 5 for ONU, Reed Thomas. Lane 6 for Calvin, Antoine Guguet. Lane 7 for ONU, Kyler Jablonski. Lane 8 for ONU, Diego Rios. Ray at 100.94 in lane 4 for ONU. Up next is heat 3. Lane 1 for Carthage, Will Murray. Lane 2 for Calvin, Alex Ketra. Lane 3 for Calvin, Josh Crump. Lane 4 for Calvin, Caleb Gemin. Lane 5 for Calvin, Cardin Nguyen. Lane 6 for ONU, Nathan Clark. Lane 7 for Carthage, Tyson Polich. Lane 8 for ONU, Grayson Morgan. Caleb Gemin at 57.5. Nguyen at 57.6. Clark at 58.2. Up next is event number 24, the women's 100-yard backstroke. There are 2 heats. This is heat 1. Swimming in lane 1 for ONU, Sophia Rissmiller. Lane 2 for Carthage is Hannah Weissman. Lane 3 for ONU, Lindsay Weininger. Lane 4 for Carthage, Delaney Gayan. Lane 5 for Carthage, Allie Donovan. Lane 6 for Albion, Charlie Nguyen. Nguyen in lane 6 takes the top time at 107.54 for heat 1 and the women's 1 back. Up next is heat 2. Lane 1 for Calvin, Katie Fippen. Lane 2 for Carthage, Maya Matthews. Lane 3 for Calvin, Megan Benjelink. Lane 4 for Calvin, Maddie McNearney. Lane 5 for Carthage, Ella Messina. Lane 6 for Calvin, Tori Beagle. Lane 7 for Carthage, Rena McDaniels. And lane 8 for Carthage, Claire Connect. McNearney at the 10000 for lane 4 for Calvin. Benjelink 101.87 in lane 3. Fippen at 104.79 in lane 1. That's going to do it for our women's 100-yard backstroke. Up next is event number 25. This is the men's 100-yard backstroke. There are 3 heats. This is heat 1. Swimming in lane 2 for Carthage, Daniel Gearhart. Lane 3 for Calvin, Bernardo Fontana de Moraes. Lane 4 for Albion, Evan Steele. Lane 5 for ONU, Evan Miller. Lane 6 for ONU, Lucas Hulota. Lane 7 for Albion, Tyler Dubel. Miller with 56.68 in lane 5. Steele at 59.73 in lane 4. Up next is heat 2 for the men's one back. Lane 1 for Carthage, Justin Roddy. Lane 2 for Calvin, Nathan Benjelink. Lane 3 for ONU, Simon Boppel. Lane 4 for Carthage, Ian Golosa. Lane 5 for Calvin, Dhruv Patel. Lane 6 for ONU, Selby Wilt. Lane 7 for Calvin, Christian Heisinga. Lane 8 for Calvin, Ben Wichert. Boppel on the wall at 54.28 in lane 3. Patel 54.76 in lane 5.
Up next is Heat 3, our final heat. Swimming in lane 1 for Carthage, Trey Hellas. Lane 2 for Carthage, AJ Landorf. Lane 3 for Calvin, David Gabriel. Lane 4 for Calvin, Jackson Merkel. Lane 5 for Calvin, Charlie Platt. Lane 6 for Calvin, Logan McKinney. Lane 7 for Calvin, Mace Boonder. Lane 8 for ONU, Aiden McGooligan. And a nice tight race there between Platt and Merkel, 49-2 and 49-3. Gabriel at 52-3, Landorf at 52-7. Results for the women's 100-yard backstroke are scrolling on, 100-yard breaststroke are scrolling on the board. We'll get those results scrolling for the rest of the events during our 15-minute break.
All right, we resume our competition with event number 27. This is the women's 800-yard freestyle relay. There is one heat. Swimming in lane 2, the Calvin B relay of Reiser, Turner, Deluski, and McNeely. Lane 3, the Carthage A relay of Belsic, Skalski, Brown, and Schaefer. Lane 4, the Calvin A relay of Poe, Maring, Russell, and Casapit. Lane 5, the ONU A relay of DeLong, Weininger, Elliott, and Kalmanowitz. Lane 6, the Albion A relay of Lewandowski, Kreb, Gray, and Adcock. Lane 7, the Carthage B relay of Messina, Hackman, Lee, and Bob. And Calvin takes the win there in lane 4 at 8:07.27. The Calvin relay consisting of Poe, Maring, Russell, and Caspit. Carthage on the wall there in lane 3 at 8:08.15. That's Belchik, Skalski, Brown, and Schaefer. Carthage on the wall in lane 7 with their B relay at 8:36.11. And that's it for the women's 8 free relay. Up next, event number 28, the men's 8 free relay. There is one heat. Here we go. Lane 1 for ONU, the B relay of Donovan, Hun, Wade, Hawkins, and Verb. Lane 2, the Calvin B relay of Jakubowski, Stimpert, Fippen, and Nelson. Lane 3, the Albion A relay of Hung, Jenkins, Roberts, and Prutch. Lane 4, the Calvin A relay of Hallberg, Haney, Ziegler, and Detweiler. Lane 5, the ONU A relay of Edmonds, Weiss, Herbert, and McCluskey. Lane 6, the Carthage A relay of Landorf, Polich, Crump, and Noller. Lane 7, the Carthage B relay of Leberevich, Nord, Murray, and Gloza. Lane 8, the Albion B relay of Matvis, Lukasic, Galvin, and Pentland. And the Calvin A relay on the wall at 7:02:45. That relay consisting of Hallberg, Haney, Ziegler, and Brick. And that's going to do it for our 800 free relays. We will see you back this afternoon for our final heat for the 2025 Quad Invitational.